God is exposing narcissists. That realization might hit you with a sudden electric shock. You feel it in your core, don't you? Deep down, you sense a new season dawning, one where hidden truths rise to the surface, where self-centered agendas unravel under the light of divine revelation. Maybe you've seen it yourself. People who once appeared strong and confident now stumbling under the weight of their own pride. Or maybe you're the one who felt crushed by their demands and manipulations, left wondering if anybody else noticed the chaos swirling around you. Well, let me tell you, God noticed. And God is not silent. He is shining a spotlight on the narcissist's behavior, and he's doing it for a reason. Because when deception is exposed, healing can finally happen. Because when we confront what's toxic, we open the door to freedom. You're here for a purpose. You didn't just stumble upon this moment by chance. You felt the sting of narcissism, maybe from a colleague who overshadowed your contributions, maybe from a family member who twisted every conversation to serve themselves, or maybe from a former friend who drained your energy, trust, and joy. Some of you have tried to fight back in silence. Others have carried the heavy weight of guilt, thinking you didn't do enough or love enough. But guess what? This isn't about pointing fingers or sinking into shame. It's about clarity. It's about standing tall in truth. It's about recognizing that God, in His infinite wisdom, is not willing to let cruelty and self-obsession wreak havoc forever. He is pulling back the curtain. He is declaring, enough. And when God says, mountains move, walls fall, chains break. And those who've been oppressed see the dawn of a new day. My friends, there is power in exposing what's wrong. There's power in naming something for what it truly is. Let's be honest, narcissists don't change just because we ask nicely. They don't magically discover empathy overnight. They thrive on control, on being adored, on collecting praise like trophies. They walk into a room and expect the spotlight to follow. They manipulate conversations so they come out looking like the hero or worse. Paint you as the villain. When you try to speak up, they twist your words until you start doubting your own sanity. Sound familiar? If it does, you are not alone. You're standing on the edge of a breakthrough moment, right where you need to be. Because this is the time to see clearly and to embrace the lesson God wants to teach us all. People often ask me, why doesn't God do something about the toxic folks who bring so much pain? But that question hides the truth that God is always at work. His light always illuminating the darkness. And in this season, I believe He is giving us eyes to see behind the mask. He is giving us the courage to confront destructive patterns. He is giving us permission to walk away from what no longer serves our destiny. So if you're feeling exhausted, frustrated, or even betrayed by someone's outrageous sense of entitlement, listen closely. There is good news. You don't have to remain trapped in that confusion. You don't have to tolerate abuse just because you're compassionate. Today is the day to reclaim your power, to step forward with new wisdom, and to let God's healing light shine on every corner of your life. This is about more than surviving. It's about thriving. It's about redemption, restoration, and standing in the truth that sets you free. Because when God is exposing narcissists, He is also releasing you into a future of clarity, joy, and peace. And so, we stand here together in this space, ready to explore a reality that might make some folks uncomfortable. We stand together, eager for fresh perspective. We stand together, longing for a solution that lifts the weight off our hearts and minds. Today is not just another day. It's not just another speech. This moment has the power to be a turning point. Let's open our hearts, raise our expectations, and get ready to receive the liberating truth that God is making plain before us. Now, I want you to take a deep breath and lean in, because we're about to dive into the heart of this matter. We're about to pull apart the layers, see what's underneath, and expose the lies that have held too many people captive for too long. First, let's face a fundamental truth. Narcissists crave attention. They feed on applause, drink in admiration, and never tire of hearing their own name proclaimed. They dress it up in charming smiles, but behind the scenes, they're building monuments to themselves. Now, why is this important for you to understand? Because if you don't see it, you will get swept away in their performance. You'll think their praise of you is genuine. You'll mistake their gifts and compliments for real devotion. But in reality, you're just a piece in their puzzle, a stepping stone to help them ascend higher. Once you stop providing that fuel, they discard you. They find a new source. And you're left wondering if any of it was real. I have a friend who spent years supporting a leader who demanded constant admiration. This leader always had to be right. He never apologized and never admitted weakness. My friend invested time, energy, and money, hoping the relationship would eventually blossom into something mutual and respectful. It never did. Every time my friend needed a helping hand, that leader vanished. When confronted, the leader would spin the story until my friend felt like he was the one at fault. That's what narcissists do. They distort the truth until they stand tall and everyone else feels small. The damage can be devastating. Broken trust, wasted years, self-doubt that eats away at your soul. But here's the silver lining. Once you recognize those tactics, you can break free. You can stop handing over your power and look them in the eye, aware of what's really happening. You can pray for discernment. You can set boundaries. You can say, no more. And eventually, the narcissist's foundation crumbles. If you choose to stay blind, the outcome is painful. You'll keep giving. You'll keep bending. You'll keep hoping they'll see your sacrifice. But narcissists see only themselves. It's like giving water to a broken vase. It never fills up. You just keep pouring and pouring until you're empty. That's what happens when we don't recognize the warning signs. We end up drained, disillusioned, and disconnected from our own purpose. But when you do see it, and I mean really see it, you can start to detach. You can reclaim your sense of worth. You can remind yourself that you are more than someone else's puppet. You can realize, wait a minute, God sees me. God loves me. I don't need to chase your approval. And in that moment, something powerful happens. You reclaim your identity as a child of God, not just an extension of the narcissist ego. How do you recognize a narcissist? Observe how they react when they're not in the spotlight. Observe how they handle criticism. Observe how they treat people who can do nothing for them. Real love shows up in humble spaces, in unseen moments, and in the willingness to extend grace. Narcissistic love shows up in grand gestures that vanish when the cameras are off. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And that's why God's exposure is so crucial. He's showing us the difference between real and counterfeit, between service and selfishness. He's highlighting the destructive impact of arrogance. And he's doing it not to condemn us, but to free us. Never forget that there is a way forward. You are not stuck in someone else's shadow. Maybe you've been taught to just get along or be the bigger person, but that doesn't mean surrendering to abuse. It means standing in love, love that speaks truth, love that sets boundaries, love that guards your heart. It also means trusting that, in the end, God's justice stands. Our job is to recognize the behavior, refuse to play the game, and trust that the same God who exposes darkness also heals the wounds it caused. So if you're in a place of confusion, if you've doubted your own sanity after dealing with a master manipulator, or if you've been sitting in silence, thinking it might be your fault, please hear this. The truth is coming to light. Let the exposure happen. Let God reveal what he needs to reveal. And then walk in that truth with your head held high. Now, I want you to picture a second key reality. The way narcissists manipulate emotions. Think about how they twist your words, how they flip the script, how they go from praising you 1 minute to blaming you the next. It's disorienting, right? One day they call you the best thing that ever happened to them, and the next day they accuse you of sabotaging them. It's like being on a roller coaster you never asked to ride. The highs feel incredible, but the lows sink you into despair. That emotional whiplash is one of the narcissist's most powerful tools. It keeps you guessing. It keeps you seeking their approval. It keeps you hoping that if you just do a little more or give a little more, they'll return to that sweet version of themselves you once knew. But that sweet version was a mask. The real face is the one that emerges when they're not getting their way. I knew a woman who lived this nightmare for nearly a decade. Her partner alternated between compliments and insults at lightning speed. She woke up each morning wondering which version of him she'd encounter. If she brought up a concern, he'd flip it around. Why do you always criticize me? Why do you never appreciate what I do? Suddenly, she was the guilty one. She found herself apologizing for issues she never caused, begging forgiveness she never needed. Over time, her self-esteem eroded. She forgot what healthy communication even looked like. She felt caged in a cycle of guilt, fear, and desperate hope. That's the toxic grip of emotional manipulation. And unless something or someone intervenes, it can destroy you from the inside out. But here's the blessing: God intervenes. Whether through a timely conversation, a chance encounter, or a surge of bravery you can't explain, his light pierces the confusion. He sends clarity. He sends the reminder that you deserve respect, that you are valued, that you are allowed to speak your truth without shame. If you ignore these emotional red flags, you risk losing yourself entirely. You become a shell of who you were meant to be. Your dreams gather dust in a corner. Your relationships suffer, and your faith can even waver because you wonder why God hasn't rescued you. But maybe God is rescuing you right now by opening your eyes, by allowing you to see the pattern, by giving you the strength to say, no more. That's why it's so important to speak up. Narcissists rely on silence. They rely on your confusion. They rely on you doubting your own instincts. But when you name the behavior for what it is, when you share your experience with someone you trust, that silence is broken. The manipulative power begins to fade. You take your life back. You reclaim your voice. What does that look like in practical terms? It means reaching out to supportive friends or counselors. It means journaling the patterns so you can see them clearly. It means setting healthy boundaries. I will not tolerate insults or threats. I will not continue this conversation if it turns destructive. It means standing firm even if they try to guilt trip you. And yes, it might mean walking away if the manipulation doesn't stop. That's not failure. That's self-care. That's wisdom. And while it's terrifying to stand up to someone whose entire identity is built on control, remember, God has got you. He's the one who says, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Don't think for a second that the manipulator has more power than God. They don't. God can move mountains in your moment you decide to trust his truth more than the narcissist's lies. It's not just about you either. When you break free, you become a lighthouse for others still trapped. Your testimony can spark change. Your courage can inspire. That's how God works. He doesn't just expose evil for the sake of exposing it. He does it so that we might live in wholeness and help others find that same freedom. So tonight, as you reflect on the emotional roller coasters you've ridden, know that you have the right to step off. You have permission to say, I'm done. And you have the power by God's grace to walk forward with dignity and renewed hope. Finally, consider this third critical truth. Narcissists fear exposure more than anything else. You see, narcissism is built on a fragile foundation of lies. Lies about who they are, what they deserve, and how the world should revolve around them. Underneath the bravado lies an insecurity so deep it can't bear scrutiny. That's why they lash out when confronted. That's why they project blame onto everyone else. That's why they run from real accountability. They're terrified that someone will see through the act. And in this season, God is removing the curtain that's protected them for too long. The narcissist empire of deceit is crumbling, and they're scrambling to keep up appearances. They might try new tactics, new manipulations, or new distractions to hide from the truth. But the truth is relentless. It keeps knocking at the door. It keeps finding its way into the open. When you understand that this fear of exposure is driving their behavior, you also understand why they react so violently to any threat of accountability. It might be a small request, like asking them to follow the same rules as everyone else, or a simple question like, can you explain why you did that? And suddenly they explode. They accuse you of betrayal. They turn others against you. They start a smear campaign. All because the mask slipped for 1 second. I recall a situation in a community group where a charming, charismatic individual controlled the narrative for years. He took credit for successes he didn't earn and shifted blame for failures he caused. Eventually, someone mustered the courage to confront him gently and privately. That confrontation triggered a storm. He accused that person of envy, of sabotage, even of mental instability. But soon more people came forward with their experiences. The pattern was undeniable, and the group realized the extent of his deception. He lost the position he coveted, and while it was painful for many, truth had finally come to light. That's what happens when God removes the veil. It might create temporary chaos, but it ultimately leads to freedom for everyone involved. If you refuse to see this dynamic, you might be fooled by a narcissist's last-ditch efforts to regain control. You might believe their sob stories. You might be swayed by their sudden generosity or their dramatic claims of victimhood. Don't be deceived. Test the fruit. Look for consistent change, not just empty words. And remember, you're not responsible for savaging their reputation or soothing their ego. You can love someone without enabling them. You can forgive someone without pretending the abuse never happened. You can wish them healing without letting them pull you back into a toxic cycle. So how do we respond to God's exposing work? We stand firm in truth. We cling to our faith and remind ourselves that God is the ultimate judge. We show grace where appropriate, but we do not compromise on matters of integrity or safety. We find a community of believers who will pray with us, encourage us, and hold us accountable. And we resist the temptation to return to what is familiar, even if it's unhealthy, because there's a new season calling our name, a season of honesty, clarity, and God-ordained purpose. When you step into that season, you're no longer weighed down by the manipulator's baggage. You're free to run, to dream, and to serve others without fear. That's the gift of exposure. It's not just about revealing the darkness, it's about releasing us into the light. So, if you're still doubting whether God really sees the narcissist in your life, whether he really cares enough to call them out, take this moment as your confirmation. He does see them. He does care. And he's giving you the tools to break free, to heal, and to move forward with boldness. The worst thing you could do is ignore it. The best thing you could do is embrace this truth and let it change you. Because trust me, a change you can change the world. Now, let's pull all of this together. Think back to everything we've uncovered. The insatiable hunger for attention, the cunning emotional manipulation, and the terror that erupts when exposure looms. These aren't random observations. They're patterns woven into the fabric of narcissism. They're the strategies that narcissists rely on to maintain control and bend others to their will. They might appear unstoppable at times, towering over people with that aura of confidence, waving stories so compelling you almost doubt your own eyes. Yet here's the message resounding through your heart right now. God is exposing them. He's dismantling the web of lies. He's rescuing those caught in deception. And in the process, he's reminding each of us that no one is truly powerful enough to outrun divine truth. That is the anchor for your soul. You are not helpless. You are not voiceless. And you are not stuck in a world where narcissists always win. The King of Kings is showing up in places you never expected, revealing what's been hidden in darkness. Take a moment to replay the scenarios in your mind. Remember the times when you felt overshadowed, belittled, or silenced. Feel the sting of those memories, but now allow yourself to sense a release, because you're no longer trapped in that narrative. God is handing you a new script. He's flipping the story so that what was used to oppress you becomes the catalyst for your growth. All that confusion you felt, all that second guessing, all that silent hurt, it's transforming into wisdom. It's fueling your resolve, never again to hand over your dignity to someone who doesn't respect it. Each heartbreak is teaching you discernment. Each betrayal is sparking a fresh awareness that not everyone who smiles at you has your best interest at heart. But that's okay. You're learning to see people as they are, not as you wish them to be. And when you see them clearly, you can love them in truth or release them without bitterness. There's a powerful call to action here. Don't remain silent. Narcissists thrive in environments where no one speaks up. They bank on your fear of confrontation. They rely on you trying to keep the peace at all costs. But God calls us to a different path, a path of righteous confrontation, guided by love but unwavering in truth. That might mean having the difficult conversation you've been avoiding. It might mean seeking professional help or spiritual guidance. It might mean taking that bold step to walk away from a destructive environment. None of this is easy, but freedom rarely is. The hardest steps are often the ones that break the strongest chains. Remember, you're not walking alone. God's Spirit is with you, empowering you to do what seems impossible. And when you act in alignment with His truth, the impossible becomes possible. Please understand, though, that exposing narcissists isn't about delighting in their downfall. It's about restoring healthy order. It's about creating space for genuine relationships built on mutual respect. It's about releasing people from toxic bondage so that real love can flourish. Narcissism robs us of community, partnership, and growth. God's exposure is a correction, an intervention meant to restore balance. If you've ever felt guilty for wanting someone held accountable, shake that off. Accountability is biblical. Humility is biblical. And if we truly desire a community that reflects God's heart, we can't shrug our shoulders at persistent, harmful behavior. We must name it, confront it, and trust that God's mercy extends even to those we call out. Because yes, even the narcissist is not beyond redemption. But redemption can't occur in denial. It starts with truth. So the real question is, where do we go from here? This is the point where we decide whether we'll keep the knowledge we've gained locked in our minds or translate it into action. Will we slip back into the comfort of old patterns, telling ourselves it's easier not to rock the boat? Will we silence our convictions and pretend everything is fine? Or will we rise up, speak with conviction, and protect our peace? My challenge to you is this: choose truth, choose dignity. Choose to believe that God wants better for you than a life overshadowed by someone else's toxicity. And choose to be part of the change, to be a voice that calls others into the light. Let's reflect on what this means for your daily life. It might mean doing an inventory of your relationships, asking, who genuinely cares for me, who drains me, who listens to me, respects me, encourages me. That's not selfish, that's wise stewardship of your emotional and spiritual resources. It might mean setting aside time in prayer or meditation, asking God to reveal hidden motives, both in others and in yourself. Because guess what? We all carry a bit of pride in our hearts. Sometimes the call to expose narcissists also challenges us to confront our own tendencies. We must remain humble, open to correction, and remember that the goal is always transformation, not condemnation. Listen to me closely. You have a destiny. You have a calling, a mission, a God-given assignment that no one else on this planet can fulfill. The enemy would love nothing more than to see you squander your potential in a cycle of emotional abuse, self-doubt, and exhaustion. But God says otherwise. God says, I know your name. I know your struggles. And I'm here to set you free. Embrace that promise. Dare to believe that the best days are ahead. Dare to believe that once the narcissist influence is broken, you'll see life with new clarity and joy. Dare to believe that you are stepping into a season of purpose. This is not a quick fix or a magical formula. This is a journey. But every journey begins with a single step. And that step might be as simple as saying, I see it now, and I won't ignore it anymore. Awareness changes everything. Once you're aware, you're responsible for what you do with that insight. And God is right here, ready to guide you, ready to bring the right people into your life, ready to strengthen your heart for the challenges ahead. Because, yes, there will be challenges. The narcissist won't go quietly. The environment might resist change. But as you stand firm in truth, you become unstoppable. You become a beacon of hope for others who haven't yet found their voice. And so, I want to leave you with this final surge of encouragement. Don't fear the light. The light is your friend. The light is where God resides. The light may reveal cracks, but it also warms. It also clarifies. It also invites healing. Stepping into the light doesn't mean you have it all together. It means you're willing to be real, to be open, to be guided by truth rather than appearances. That's the posture God honors. That's the posture that breaks strongholds. That's the posture that changes families, communities, and yes, even entire nations. When enough people embrace the light, darkness can't stand. The narcissist's illusions lose their power, and a new day dawns for all of us. So here we stand at the close of this message, but truly at the beginning of something greater. We've walked through the reality of who narcissists are and what they do. We've named their hunger for attention, their manipulative tactics, and their fear of exposure. We've seen that ignoring these traits leads to heartbreak, while recognizing them sets us on a path to freedom. We've learned that God is not passive. He is actively peeling back the layers of deception and inviting us to partner with Him in that process. In doing so, we protect our peace, restore our joy, and honor the image of God in ourselves and others. If there's one takeaway you hold tight, let it be this. You deserve better than a life spent under someone else's tyranny. You are worthy of healthy love, clear communication, and relationships that build you up rather than tear you down. Now, let's stitch it all together. Let's gather every insight we've gained like a bouquet of truth, wrapping it up in a ribbon of determination. The solution begins with awareness, calling out the behavior, refusing to be silent, and trusting God's timing. It continues with boundaries, practical, tangible steps to protect your emotional and spiritual well-being. It flourishes in community, seeking people who encourage you to grow, to speak, and to love honestly. And it ends in hope, the unshakable belief that God never starts a work without finishing it. He's begun a work in you, a work of revelation and growth. So let him finish it. Cooperate with his plan. Step out of the shadows and into his marvelous light. I want you to picture, in this final moment, a vast open field under a clear sky. The shadows are behind you. The sun is high. Every part of you can breathe in the fresh air of freedom. That's what God desires. That's what the exposure of narcissism is all about. Banishing hidden agendas, hidden motives, and hidden pains, so that what remains is honest and true. Will you claim that freedom today? Will you trust that God's got your back? Will you stand up, walk tall, and speak with a voice that resonates from your spirit straight into heaven? Because if you do, chains will fall off, hearts will heal, and a powerful testimony will rise, pointing others to the one who rescues us from darkness. This is my invitation to you. Take that leap of faith, whether it's a small step or a giant stride. Let the words you've heard today live in you. Let them guide your next decision, your next conversation, your next prayer. Let them remind you of who you are, a beloved child of God, equipped with everything you need to break free from the shadows of manipulation. You don't have to fight alone. You never have. God has been and always will be with you. And so I leave you with a blessing. May your eyes remain open to see truth. May your heart remain brave to speak truth. And may your spirit remain free to live in truth. In that truth, there is liberty. In that truth, there is peace. And in that truth, you'll discover the destiny God prepared for you long before any narcissist crossed your path. Step into that destiny. Live it. And as you do, watch how everything changes. Watch how the grip of fear loses its hold. How your confidence returns. How your joy blossoms like a flower that's finally getting sunlight. That's what it feels like when God exposes darkness and sets his people free. That is your inheritance. That is your promise. Go forth and claim it in the name of the one who sees all, knows all, and heals all. Amen.